Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves as famous carpet weavers in the bustling Persian market city of Tabriz. You'll be sending your assistants to the Grand Bazaar to buy and trade for materials that you need to complete commissions for commoners, merchants, and royals. Tabriz is for 1 to 5 players. For ages 10 and up, it takes 30 to 60 minutes to play and is published by Crafty Games. Today, we'll be doing a rules school for the solo rival mode. Well, I'm going to teach you how to play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Without further ado, let's get started. First, let's talk about setting up the solo mode. Now, you must know how to play the standard game of Tabriz because I'm just going to be showing you what's different in both setup and gameplay from the main game, so make sure you're familiar with that first. Secondly, this specific prototype that I'm using are not final components. These are prototypes. However, they will still allow you to learn the game because when you get your final production copy, it'll look similar to this. First, you're going to select a rival. Now, the back side of the player boards have the rival side, and you can tell it's the rival side because it will have cards here as the difficulty of that rival, and it will also talk about the rival's turn. Now, there's different difficulty levels. 1 card here is medium, 2 cards is for hard, and if you have a 3-card ones, that's very hard. So you'll select one of these rivals to go against depending on the difficulty. So let's say we selected that red rival. Now you'll set up the game completely as if it was a 2-player game, otherwise than what I'm going to show you here. So the different things you'll do is for the rival, you'll set them in these spots. So we have the board set up for a 2-player game, and then in the market square and the 2 spaces, 1 to the left and 1 to the right, you'll also place one. Your assistants all start in the market square as normal. Now the rival does not get any coins or commissions, but they will get a skill marker, which you'll put near it because you will be moving this up the skill track as normal. Now the object of the game is to beat the rival, and at the end of the game the rival is going to score differently depending on which rival you selected. For example, this rival is going to get 1 prestige for every 3 coins, 1 prestige for every 2 red die, 1 point for each set of those 3 resources, and 1 prestige for each of the silk. So that's how it is going to score. Now the last thing you'll do is create the dice pool, which is differently from our normal game. Now if you remember, when you set up, certain tiles that you place will have some starting dice on there. Now once you've done that setup, you're going to take all the rest of the dice and you're going to roll them to create a die pool. However, you want to make sure that there's never more than 3 of any particular die, and depending on the setup that might happen. If you do have any more than 3, any additional would go back in the box, so you'll never have more than 3. You're going to roll them and you're going to place them below the corresponding column of that die color for the rival. This is going to be the dice pool. We'll go over this later. So let's talk about some of the differences in gameplay. Number 1, the rival will never have the first player marker. You'll always go first. Now when you move your assistant, if you end up in a spot that is not the center marketplace, but does have one of the rival's assistants, you must pay the rival 1 coin. Now, if you can't pay the coin, you cannot take that tile's action, otherwise you take it as normal. You can put the rival's coins just above the scoring for that. It makes it easier to help score at the end of the game. Now the gameplay goes just like the standard game, where you're going to have player turns, but after you take your first turn, remember you're always first, then the rival's going to take a turn. You're going to take a second turn, then the rival takes their second turn. You're going to take your third turn, then the rival will take their third turn. So how does the rival take turns? Well, in their first turn, they're going to be using this column and this set of dice in the dice pool. Their second turn, they'll be using this column in dice, and the third action for them, they're going to be using that. So let's say you've moved your first assistant, and you've optionally taken the action of that market, and then you've optionally completed a commission. Well, now it's going to be the rival's first turn, and so let's go here. Now, they have 3 of these. Now, you always start from the top and work your way down and do the things that you can do. For example, we have 3 of these, so these 3 dice would trigger, and you would move all rival assistants to the positions of the player assistants, but as these get spent, these get moved to the side. Now these are still considered being in the dice pool, but they're no longer going to be going down here. And since they actually did trigger something, and they have no dice left, they wouldn't do anything else in this action. But let's say instead they had 3 green dice here, then you would essentially remove all resources from the tile with the highest number of resources and keep 1. So for example, they would remove all of these and put the rest in the supply but keep 1 of them. And again, it's always good to keep them near where they score to help you for figuring out how many points they'll be able to get. And again, these dice would have gone to the side since they have no dice left and they took an action. That would be it. But sometimes they'll be taking multiple actions. So let's assume it's their first action as the rival, and we look at this, and this is their dice set. We'd start from the top. Nope, we don't. They don't have 3 yellows. They don't have 3 greens. They don't have 1 of each of these. They don't have 2 yellows, but they have 2 greens. So now we would trigger these 2. Again, these are still part of the dice pool. They're spending them. Now in this case, they would remove 2 of the yellow camel hairs from the board, but they'd keep 1 above their own board. They'd do the same for the green die. And we'd go down here. We don't have 2 white, we don't have 1 yellow, but we do have 1 white. So here they could trade 2 of the yellow camel hair 1 time to gain 2 coins. So that's what they're going to do. And they would go like this. And now they have no dice left, so their first action would be over. Now it would go to your second action where you'll be moving and possibly doing actions on the tiles and possibly finishing commissions as normal. Now you may notice the bottom of each column has a default action. There's certain times when you'll take this for the rival. So let's say we had this die, and instead of us doing this for the rival, which is trading 2 of their yellow camel hair 1 time and giving the rival 2 coins from the supply. Instead, let's say they didn't have any. They couldn't do this. They didn't have 2 camel hair. In this case, you would then do this, which would be move it up the track, just like this. And that skill track works similarly to the main game. Now keep in mind that the rival must take every triggered action it can complete, meaning you can't avoid an action the rival could take at any time. Now there might be times, since all these dice are part of the dice pool that you can interact with, that when they get to their action, like let's say you took your second action, it's now the rival's second action, and there's no gray dice here. In that case, they would take that default action. In this case, it would be get a coin. Now let's say it was the rival's second action, which means you just finished your second action. And we get down to here, we have these dice, we come down here, and green is the first top one that we have dice for the rival. This is swap a black die in the market with 1 of the dice used to trigger this ability. So you're gonna end up spending both of these to swap for 1 of the black dice. Now when you do that, you select which die you're gonna swap it with. So in this case, we'll go like that. Now, the die that you did not place there, it's the second one. Remember, there was an additional die. That one will be spent. It's off to the side. Again, still part of the dice pool. But the one that you swapped it with, you must roll and place under the corresponding column. Remember, because all of these dice are considered the dice pool that you can interact with. Now, the rival has already taken their first action, so they're not going to do anything with this die. But again, you might be able to interact with that as part of the dice pool. And then, of course, they have this left, so they would remove the red die and keep it, meaning they'd put it above there. But again, if there was not any red there, they would get to do this default action. Now let's say it's your third action. Now let's say you went to Geek's Market and you could roll a die from the pool and then buy all resources shown. And this is where the strategy really opens up here, because all of these are in the pool, but you know that they have not taken their third action yet. You could take 1 of these dice and you get to select which one you take. So you can look at these dice and say, okay, right now they're gonna be able to do this. I don't want them to do that. Which thing do I not want them to do down here? Well, I don't want them to go up the track. So I'm gonna take this one in hopes that when this die gets rolled back into the dice pool, when I'm done with my Geek's Market action, it won't be a camel hair. So there's a lot of strategy that's looking forward and kind of stopping them from doing things that you don't want them to do. It's a big part of the strategy in a solo game. Now our hopes was that after that Geek action, when we re-rolled that die, that it was something different. But if it did come up as the camel hair, well, we're back where we were. But we were hoping, by pulling this out, that it wasn't going to be that when it got re-rolled. For example, if it re-rolled as this, then we would start working our way down and we would remove 3 of the wool and keep 1 for the rival. Those would have gotten spent, and then they would have moved the rightmost rival assistant to the tile with the highest number of resources. So you can see, you can try to plan and try to change what the rival can do, but sometimes you're going to have to roll a dice back in that pool to see what happens. Now in the workshop phase, again, they never get the first player marker, but you would take all of the dice in the dice pool and you would roll them and put them under the corresponding columns. And notice now in the last round, because we swapped a gray and black die, that has changed the distribution of the dice pool for this round. Because now on the rival's first action, which of course is after your first action, they're gonna be able to do this because they have 1 of each of these. And they're gonna be able to remove all the silk and keep it. That's crazy. They might get a ton of silk. Of course, if there's no silk out there, then they would just take that skill track action. But then additionally, they'll be able to trade 2 of these yellow cotton for 2 coins. So they'll get to do some more powerful things because there's more dice, but that also means that there's less somewhere else as well. Now let's talk about the finer points of the rival. Now, anytime they spend coins or resources, they're taken from above their mat and they're placed into the supply. And anytime they gain them, it's best to put them up here as well. Also, when taking actions for the rival, like here, remove 3 of the red die and keep 1. Well, if there's less than 3, you still remove as many that are there and you still get to keep 1 because you can partially do as much as you can in the action. And when going up the skill track, remember that you'll be gaining different things for the rivals. So here they would get 1 red die from the supply and place it up above their mat. And at the end of the game, they're going to get prestige depending on where they are. So here they're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 prestige. At the end of the game, they'll get that for having this skill marker here on the track. Now you keep going through rounds until the game ends, and it ends of one of 2 ways. Either when you complete your 9th commission, or you gain 14 skill. Now, if you get to the 14 skill before the rival does, you get the prestige bonus. However, if the rival gets there before you, they get the prestige bonus token. And of course, this would end the game if they got there either A, before you, or before you got your 9th commission completed. And once that happens and it triggers the end of the game, you finish the round and you total your prestige as normal. And again, the rival calculates their prestige based upon what I talked about earlier, prestige versus certain resources. So they would see how many they have. They would get a certain amount of prestige based upon these and coins. And of course, the prestige here, and then possibly they have prestige from their bonus token. And whoever has the most points of prestige at the end is the winner. Now, if there's a tie with the rival, you win if you have the most total coins and resources, with each resource of any type being worth 1 coin. And if it's still a draw, it's a tie, and you share the marketplace for now. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Tabriz's solo rival mode faster than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have further questions about the rules, I've placed the link below me in the description of this video. That's the best place to ask them, since I'll be notified, but so will Crafty Games.